Hello.
Hello, I'm Muna.
I'm Melissa, and we co-founded the design studio Daily Tous les jours. We are an interaction design and narrative environment builders.
And what we're mostly interested in is to try to enable conversation between people, between strangers. And over the past 5 years, we've had the chance to do it a lot in public spaces. And so to show you a little bit the kind of work that we try to do, we'll use the words of Michael Sandel as he speaks about the importance of public spaces. He says, democracy does not require perfect equality, but it does require that citizens share in a common life. What matters is that people of different walks of life bump up against each other in the ordinary course of life, because that teaches us to negotiate and abide our differences. And that's how we come to care for the common good.
And in designing for public spaces, in this idea of common life, we often are attracted by open-ended experiences. And another reference that we love to talk about is the one of James P. Carse in his book Finite and Infinite Games, where he talks about finite games as being built to play for the purpose of winning, and infinite games played for the purpose of continuing to play. So now I want a show of hands who's an infinite player here. Hello, infinite people. We like to think of infinite cities and infinite people where rules can be bent. And when you think of designing for a city, historically, it's always been about doing things that are permanent, that will not change, even in art or infrastructure. It's made in bronze, and it will stay forever. And with technologies and participation from the public, and as things change more and more, it's really exciting to see how cities can actually be more infinite and change continuously and adapted to people's needs and imagination.
So in the next few minutes, we'll be showing you 4 projects that were experimentations along these lines. So one of the projects which you might have heard of, which is now in its 5th year of presentation here in Montreal, has really been kind of a driver for our practice. It's called 21 Swings. And the original invitation by the city was to install kind of an invitation for the public to come and experience that space between the Science Pavilion of UQAM and the Opera House on the other side. So trying to work within that context, we invited a scientist on one side, Luc-Alain Giraldo, and a musician on the other one, Redouane Razimoumni, to come up with an idea for that site. And this is when the idea of creating a gigantic cooperative instrument came along. So we experimented with various kind of cooperative type of interfaces, and then went back to the site and to the infrastructure the city had already built. They had built these little structures which were permanent, and these became the inspiration to actually hang swings and use the swings as the invitation for people to come together. So this is a little bit how the project came along. The interface is pretty simple. The higher you swing, the higher you note. The higher the note. And it sounds in different ways depending on how you play. You can play alone, and that's fine. But if you start playing with others, you generate more musical harmonies. And thus, we kind of reward these cooperative behaviors.
And some early drawings might have looked like Seth's drawing of a sign for his wife's
gigantic, absurd object. And so this project really kind of came to life, inviting people to find all sorts of ways to cheat and bend the rules so they can cooperate, come to life at night as well, and make the public become performers. Everyone became performers, and everyone, in a way, became these infinite players. So right now the project is in a touring version. These are 10 swings that we're hoping to present in as many places as we can and experiment with these similar ideas.
This was in the mountains of Colorado. So continuing on this idea of having people performing without them noticing too, we were given a new space, a new project, still in the Quartier des Spectacles, but this time partnering with the National Film Board of Canada, who were paying tribute to Norman McLaren. Norman McLaren, famous, iconic pioneer in animation films. And they gave us the archives and said, pick any film you want and create a public experience with it. And we were very much attracted by this film called Canon, made in 1964, where you have these cannons of movements that suddenly generate all sorts of narratives. And we were imagining how could we create a collective cannons where everyone has a series of movements that are repeated, and together, without noticing, they're creating this collective, infinite movie live on the street. So we we prototyped a lot in studios trying to see how we could make collective cannons. So the idea was to have the first one that was made by Grant Munro, the original actor in Norman McLaren's film, and then that you would imitate, and then the second player would imitate the first player, and the third player, the second player, and so on, a little bit like Chinese whispers. The collective canon would evolve and transform itself as many players and imagination there is. And so this was the studio that we built right on the street, temporary studio space with a little open-air theater. And this is how it looked from outside, inspired by McLaren's drawings of cannons, trying to explain what they were about. And this is how you would participate. You would have a double screen where you would see the person before you or the original actor. You would perform in this semi-public space, a little bit closed, a little bit open. And as soon as you would be done, you would be projected live, very big and tall in the public space. And this film, this new canon film, would take place every night and attract all sorts of crowds, young and old, that would gather around. You could take part or you could just watch the film as it was being made. And that's a favorite picture that you saw very quickly. That is a bus line where we were also using the fact that people were just waiting by the bus to animate the space. And during the day, it was still a public space.
We've recently also been invited by a playground producer called Vortex International to try to reinvent the playground. It was an interesting challenge for us to work with something that was a little bit more permanent and like a product. And so Vortex has been producing these splash pads for many years, which bring lots of happiness to kids. But they're really kind of these enclosed spaces. This is kids, this is grown up, and that's how the city functions. So we took that challenge, got inspiration a little bit from more open type of play, more infinite play, in this case, the river, and proposed to Vortex a project that's called Water Journeys, which are these little kind of stream-like inspired structures that are much more discrete and that could be integrated both in a more park-like environment and hopefully urban environments as well, promoting more multi-generational kind of uses for these infrastructure. It's a project that's just starting to be commercialized, and we're excited to see how it's going to impact, and the different places will come to life too.
It was certainly nice to work on a real product that is going to be implemented in different cities. And more recently, we were invited in the prototyping end of the process for the Market Street Prototyping Festival in San Francisco. It's an invitation for 50 designers, local and international, to come and think about the future of Market Street, an iconic and problematic street in San Francisco. We were invited by Autodesk, and the street wants to be pedestrianized. And as infinite gamers, we like to bend the rules and saw this prototyping narrative as the perfect context to bend all the rules, and especially the ones you can't usually, the ones of traffic signs and traffic lights that are usually untouched in the context of urban interventions. So in an attempt to connect both sides of the street, we reinvented traffic lights and traffic signs that would be made for pedestrians only. Because historically, traffic lights were the first sign that cities were to be ruled by cars. We thought we'd re-give them back to pedestrians. And if they were to communicate in the open-ended way we've experienced, music is certainly a really efficient and productive way. And so there you go. They would manipulate we'd have a knock-knock interface that we test and prototype along the festival for people to make music and with people from across the street. And voila. And so it was also an experiment in temporary and permanent structures and prototyping for urban scale. We had the large cardboard structures that were recycled at the end of the event, and we've taken that in our crate suitcases, and they're ready to tour. So
this is a little bit an overview, the kind of work that we've been trying to do. And if we want to leave you with some of the things we're trying to do to animate the city, it would be these: bend the rules, try to bring magic, enable connections, and make places. Thank you very much.
Thank you.